Hello and welcome to this final section of my three-part series looking at athletic development in secondary schools. For those that are just joining the presentation, my name is Jack and I'm a strength and conditioning coach based in Bristol and the Southwest. For the benefit of those just joining us, please let me provide a quick review of part 2. So firstly, we briefly looked into some of the holistic short and long-term outcome goals of students committing to a resistance training curriculum. And secondly, we looked at the onset of maturity and some considerations around tracking and managing a student through accelerated rates of growth. So in part 3, we have 3 areas that we're going to look at. So this will be a slightly longer segment than my prior sections. Firstly, we're going to look at the physical and technical milestones of the curriculum. Secondly, we shall explore the curriculum, stages 1 to 6, elaborating on some of the core aspects. And finally, we shall explore a battery of tests that are suitable for this curriculum that fits the fundamental needs of the student. So before we get stuck into the nuts and bolts, let's look at our key milestones that make up our physical pathway through the curriculum. There are 2 distinct gateways that we want to graduate from. Firstly, our development base, which is levels 1 to 3, looking at movement competency, which is general neuromuscular control with appropriate range of movement. Once we have mastered this technical phase, then our students are ready to advance to levels 4 to 6, with level 6 being our benchmark, which challenges more complex movement patterns under a relative load, thus intensifying the stimulus applied, forcing an adaptation. Once we have achieved the level 6 relative load value across all exercise prescriptions with technical competency, then we can confidently state that the student is of a sound, robust, supple and stable status, thus equating to mastery level, giving students the key attributes to be athletic in both exercise and sports performance. One final note before we get stuck into the complexities of the curriculum. The non-linear nature of physical growth and the varying capacity to acquire all movements in the curriculum means that this model is not a rigid or linear pathway. By this I mean levels 1 to 3 do not belong solely to the younger students, nor do levels 4 to 6 belong to the older students. Students will find their way through the curriculum at their own rate, regardless of when they join the school program, i.e. from when they start from the beginning of secondary school or joining from further education level. Some will advance quicker than others through the different exercise prescription levels. What we must be consistent in and champion as the supervising staff is our ability to teach what the exercise is, demonstrate it with confident form, and back up by coaching with clear cues to refine a student's movement pattern. So to help navigate through this jumble of words in a big table, let's first work from top to bottom and then left to right. So to help frame this development stage of the curriculum, let's refer to the lifted text on the right here. So to truly target overall athletic development, training should initially aim to improve technical competency in a broad range of physical qualities, e.g. resistance training. So we know what our key focuses to strive for are, but firstly, the building blocks prior to that are detailed in the Athletic Policy tab. That's located on the left-hand column here. We want to achieve a solid position, i.e. our range of movement, with an appropriate pattern, i.e. our general neuromuscular control. Our movement mobility prep is in the opening segment, typically lasts maximum 5 minutes. This can be as simple as mimicking the movement pattern that occupies the main resistance training session. So for example, if you're squatting in the main part of your session, simply looking to perform a bodyweight squat or a hip mobilizing action. Either of these will provide a strenuous but constructive stimulus. This period also acts as a general performance prep period, giving a pulse raising or muscle activation effect. So the goal is by no means to exhaust the student, but merely enhance their readiness to train. Just a quick side note here, from my experience, there is also a very small window here to have a little bit of fun at the end of the prep period. So with say like a static paired reaction or proprioceptive game. In my opinion, this engages the students. It gets the competitiveness firing, gets them talking, gets them smiling. In my experience, this gets them ready. Our sets and reps tab refers to the main session's total exercise volume within a given session. When we are learning a movement for the first time, we want to expose our students to a higher volume that is not loaded. So the sets and rep count is higher. As the student progresses from level 1 to level 3, and even level 4 in this case, then the sets and reps will progress from 6 times 8 repetitions to 3 times 4 repetitions. Just appreciate this descent in volume as we enter into levels 4 and 6. In the sets and reps tabs, there is a bracketed value, the RIR, which is your reps in reserve. This is a strategy to help a student manage what reps they have left in the tank, so to speak, before they should typically fail, thus providing a relative threshold. So as more load is introduced onto the student, the reps in reserve is lowered. So starting out in levels 1 to 3, the threshold is not as demanding, as we are just focusing on movement competency, and there isn't a significant enough load to work the student. Therefore, the reps in reserve is 2 to 3 repetitions left in the tank. If, for example, the student thinks they could perform 5 to 6 repetitions in a given set, additional on top of what is required, then we are perhaps not challenging the student's movement position or pattern enough. The concept of reps in reserve, guys, is more pertinent in levels 4 to 6, when relative load is applied and a more meaningful demand is placed upon them. If we move to the exercise rest period tab, we can see that the duration is shorter in the early levels and gradually increases as we progress through. This is due to the exercise prescription not being as intense in the early levels, therefore we do not require as much recovery time. Our high energy ATP PC stores will not be as depleted as they have not been exhausted enough to require longer durations of recovery. If we move on to the main session exercise variables, so just looking along the tabs below the exercise resistance pathway, we'll notice that we have an initiating part of the session. We'll be looking at velocity attributed qualities, i.e. ballistic, plyometrics, and Olympic lifting education. Ballistics and plyometrics is a key focus because we want to consciously train naturally occurring stretch shortening cycle mechanisms that are going to enhance a student's athletic or exercise performance. And Olympic lifting is a key aspect because it is something new. The students can learn over time, of which they will have plenty during their secondary school years. It's also highly relatable to sports performance and general exercise. Then we cover the scope of our whole body with different exercise prescriptions, i.e. our squat and hinge pattern, our upper body push and pull, and finally our rotary and anti-rotary. I've used plenty of abbreviations for the exercises, guys, so I'm not expecting everyone to know each and every one, but what you can learn here is that a student progresses through these exercises, they become progressively more challenging, both in load applied and complexity of the movement. Every athlete starts at level 1. Since you have never worked with them before, a student may say at the beginning of a program, or I've done this exercise before, or I know what to do here. That's great, but I need you to show me that you can successfully do that. Once you've seen them doing it successfully, then they can advance further into the curriculum. We don't want to kind of risk or elevate any chances of sustaining any kind of injuries, guys, just from not going through some of the proper ABCs. So if we're just looking at the color coding here, the contrasting blue signifies session 1 and 2. So all light blue colored exercise prescriptions in level 1 are performed in session 1 over a given week, and the dark blue colored exercises are performed in session 2 of that same given week.